My name is Senthil Kumar, and thank you for taking your time today and joining us for Migrating Intranet to Cloud webinar. We have about 60 minutes, to cover this webinar. We are going to try to make the presentation in about 45 minutes and then leave the rest of the time for your questions if you have any. As a general information, this webinar will be recorded and emailed to all attendees. Attendees are muted throughout this webinar. If you have any questions, please use the question box in the control panel on the left. We will consolidate all questions and try and answer it towards the end. If you have any feedback, you can send to this email ID displayed in the screen right now. Before we move into the webinar, let me give you a quick introduction about Trigent, who we are. We are IT Services Microsoft Gold Certified Partner, in business for the last 20 years, successful years, I would say, generating about 30 million global revenue, worked with lots of clients in a variety of platforms, including SharePoint, Yammer, Azure, Mobile, Office 365. Worked with 100+ clients, executed 120 projects, 80 deployments, 180K manner of work experience, headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts, along with other 3 offices across the globe. And here are our co-presenters for the day, Sharada and Chela.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Sharada Harnal. I work as a SharePoint architect for Trigent. We primarily help our clients in building their intranet or extranet on SharePoint 2013 as well as 2010. We also help our clients with their online portals, document management systems, automating their business processes, etc. Most of it we do it on Office 365 or on-premise installation of SharePoint. And for some of our clients, we have done a hybrid as well. And some of our clients are on private deployment models as well. So yeah, that's about a little bit about me and what we do here as a SharePoint practice in Trigent. I'll pass over to Chela.
Good afternoon. This is Chela Palaniappan. Very happy to be with you all here this afternoon. I am the VP of Client Services with Trigent. I work very closely with the technical team such as Sharda and her team at Trigent to build and deliver solutions across a variety of technology landscape to our clients in an outsourced consulting model. I'm father of 2, married for 20 years. I love running, photography, and cooking while I'm not working. Those are my hobbies. Let's get started. Let's quickly review our agenda for the hour. Then we'll move over. So we would begin our webinar with a kind of a review of the available cloud services models and how that translates into SharePoint, so that what the SharePoint deployment scenarios that you have. And we will review Office 365, which is essentially one of the primary ways to get to SharePoint on the cloud. So Office 365 types of subscription models available and editions. And we'll review, SharePoint. Why is SharePoint a compelling intranet platform? What features of SharePoint are more useful in an intranet scenario? Then we'll also look at how the SharePoint is superior in a cloud form rather than in an on-premises model, and how is that better in general. And we'll also look at, we understand we coming from a large consulting background, we understand that one size does not fit all in many situations. So there are situations when cloud-based deployment may not be viable or may not be advisable for you. We will review what those are, and we will finally review quick steps or kind of a journey in your migration to cloud. And then we'll wrap up the presentation with the key takeaways for the hour. So let's get started. So I think the easiest way to understand service delivery model is to understand through a simple example. So in this one, we're looking at typical options available for any consumer to get a pizza. Those are make, make it home, bake, take a frozen pizza and put it in the oven and bake it, or call out delivery, or dine out. As we're looking at this, different options, the complexity of each of these options are different. So looking for the traditional make it home on the left, extreme left, you pretty much cover everything that is responsible. You're responsible for everything. You control the best options or the exact type or the quality of ingredients and everything else, and you pretty much have the control of the experience. On the other hand, on the extreme right, if you're completely dining out, you pretty much leave everything to the service provider, except for the payment. You pay, and then you leave everything to the service provider, including the ambience and the experience and everything else. You don't have a control over the pizza quality or the ambience. Everything is left to them. But it's simplified usage model for you. Now, looking the same thing for a software, mapping the same thing for a software service, we can easily understand, pretty much the same principle apply in the software as a service model, also in the software delivery models. On the extreme left is the on-premise model, where you have everything is including server, OS, database, applications, everything else as you own them. And moving towards the right, you have the information infrastructure as a service or a platform as a service. And then finally, the software as a service. So in the infrastructure as a service model, customers are responsible for managing their application, data, runtime, but a lot of those networking, storage, servers, all those things are left to the service provider. On the platform as a service model, as a customer, you pretty much focus only on the application and the data, and you leverage a lot of layers from the service vendor. This is very much true for things like Azure or a Force.com platform, where you build the application but leave everything else to the service provider. Finally, on the right extreme is the software as a service model, where essentially, which is the most popular cloud model today, everything else left to the service provider, everything is managed by the vendor. Customers access the application through simple browsers or devices and pay by usage. Now, we can look at the same thing, how this applies to SharePoint. So in the SharePoint, we have multiple deployment models, starting with what we've seen in the previously, so the on-premises model. So the on-premises, and then the privately hosted on Azure or the cloud, and lastly the hybrid. The differences or the benefits are the on-premises, privately hosted or Azure hosted have very similar benefits, meaning that you have a lot of customization, configuration, control, things like that, but the responsibilities vary, right? The infrastructure cost, everything else is offline from you. If you are using a privately hosted one, you don't have to own the infrastructure. You leave the infrastructure to somebody else. You essentially use the software on the hardware provided by infrastructure provider and build your applications, and you have that privately hosted. On Azure or privately hosted, you enjoy a lot of benefits of scalable resources. As the user increases, you can increase the server resource, full control, and you are also very much assured of a good business continuity. There are many companies that provide today, either in a privately hosted model or an Azure model, such as Rackspace, FB Web, and others can provide a dedicated managed SharePoint hosting services. Or you can pretty much roll your own environment in Azure too, with Microsoft. The cloud, the Office 365 model is the most common and the preferred model. The benefits obviously are the low cost, pay-as-you-go model, and very high business continuity through multiple data centers that are provided by Microsoft. Also, you can be Microsoft with a newer trend, and they push newer features are available on the cloud first before they become even available on premises. So you're always are on the leading edge of the technology and consuming the latest products from Microsoft. When we're considering deployment options, it's also important for us to look at the development options, meaning as you can build deployment models that are more targeted towards cloud, but if you have any specific customization or development, you don't want to be hampering that cloud-centric model. So there are different development options. The first one, the farm solutions, sandbox solutions, are much more closer towards the on-premises, whereas the hosted apps are more towards the cloud-centric model. So any customization, you also want to keep in mind that customization also must fall into your cloud strategies, so to say. Now let's see how we can have what are the different ways to get SharePoint in a SaaS model. So the most common one is the SharePoint on the cloud is through the popular offering from Microsoft, which is Office 365. Office 365 is a set of cohesive services and components. Office 365 bundle includes email, calendaring, OneDrive, Yammer, Skype. There are so many other components are there. And some of the components are very newer, which is the Delve and the Flutter and other components are very new tools which are available in Office 365 and not available on other on-premises model. We'll review them. But looking at here, the SharePoint is one of the largest components. So keeping in mind our focus is at SharePoint, for many of our customers, the easiest way to get SharePoint on a cloud is through Office 365. The best advantage here is the price and the way pay-as-you-go model without any capital expenditure, and that's the reason why this way of getting to SharePoint or intranet is very popular with small and medium businesses that we come across. Let's look at what versions of Office 365 that we can get. There are multiple plans that are available. Comes in two big, large groups, business and enterprise. Apart from business and enterprise, there are also models that are plans that are available for home and professional, but we will not look at them. So in the two big categories, the business and enterprise, the business provides are more targeted. The three plans under the business group is targeted more towards small and medium businesses, and the enterprise targets the large corporate enterprises and deployments. The business essential plan provides email services, and the Office 365 business does not, no email, but you get Office online, and the business premium combine both those things and brings the benefits. The enterprise, you get E1 through E4. There is a E4 plan too. The differences across these plans are mostly around whether you want installed Office applications, email, web conferences, things like that. So what is included is the one that differs. In the E4 tend to be larger needs towards compliance, e-discovery, analyticals, and other things are included in E4. So that's a kind of a difference. But if you do not want the full suite of Office, there are sometimes you may not want the entire suite of Office. It is possible to get SharePoint online as an individual component from Microsoft. Those again come in two different variations. One is a Plan 1 and a Plan 2. So the Plan 1 is pretty much a basic features. Plan 2 provides executive level functions as BI and compliance and so on. The reason for SharePoint Online, why there are specific needs that you may use SharePoint Online as a separate platform for, especially if you're using for a specific group or a very niche purposes or for deep collaboration or isolated unique project that you may want to try out or something like that, in which case that you want to keep this away from the Office 365 bundle, but deploy it in a separate fashion. So there are cases where the SharePoint Online does make sense, and it is available for many people to consume from Microsoft. Let's review why SharePoint as a very compelling intranet platform. So SharePoint is either in the on-premises model or in the cloud model. It's a very compelling intranet platform. The world has become a very giant network. We have changed the way we work. We work from anywhere, anytime, and any device. We work with more people than ever before, and our customers demand more faster responses, personalized services, better experiences, and everything else. For all these things, the traditional intranet platform does not really suffice our needs. We need the way that we work today requires tools to be a very digital workplace platform rather than individual tools. These digital workplace and platforms encompass a variety of features: document management, web conferences, social features, collaborations within your own organization, collaboration across the border, across the boundaries, organizational boundaries, either with your vendor or with your partner, and so on. So all these things are SharePoint leverages these functionalities, such as social functionalities, collaboration functionalities, and all these things to provide a platform that allows your organization to be very responsive from hierarchy to networks, move from a control to empowerment model, or from a rewards to motivation model. I'll let Sharda talk more about these specific features of SharePoint. We will look at them closely before we move on. Sharda, over to you.
Thank you, Chala. Thank you so much for the introduction. Let me now walk you all through some of the powerful social features that SharePoint 2013 is offering as a product. What you see on the screen are some of the highlights of the social feature. So, SharePoint 2013 comes up with social networking tools such as My Sites and content collaboration technologies such as social content technologies such as blogs, wikis, RSS. These are examples of social computing features of SharePoint 2013. Now, you might have a question like, how does these social features help your organization or employees of your organization? So these features enable users to easily capture and share information and knowledge and their expertise and gain expertise that is needed to do their work. This kind of sharing of information encourages collaboration, it improves innovation, and it will also target relevant content to the people who have to see it. You can adapt content to each user based on their activities, while and at the same time administrators can set policies to protect privacy of the content across the organization. So let's look at microblogging. What a user can do on a microblog. A user can post a message which they want to publicize, or they want to create a public dialogue about it. So you, in this microblog, you can include text, URLs, pictures, as well as videos. Ad mentions, what you are seeing on the bottom right, it's an example of ad mentions. Say if a user, a particular user is a subject matter expert in a particular area, you might want to ad mention or tag that user to get his attention, his or her attention, and you may want to seek a response for your current conversation by doing so. Then you have something called as following, where you can follow, users can follow people, they can follow sites, tags, or any content that they are interested in. When users are following an entity, updates and new information about that entity will be displayed in the user's news feed. Likes and activities, users can like a post or reply in the news feed as a way of giving public validation that a post or reply was useful to them. By liking an item, an user can easily reference that item from the likes in their news feed. Then we have activity feeds, which provides a view into recent activity related to content, links, media, or people. Now let's see what's OneDrive for Business. OneDrive for Business provides your intranet users the ease of accessing content from anywhere using any device, using OneDrive or on cloud, instead of storing your document locally, so that you don't have to have sleepless nights due to due to a disk failure or a computer theft, which unfortunately happens when you least expect it. On OneDrive, all your documents are automatically backed up, and it's a place where you can store, sync, and share your work files. As part of Office 365, SharePoint, OneDrive for Business lets you update and share files from anywhere and work on Office 365 documents with others at the same time, which is called as co-authoring. And if you are using Office 365, you get 1 terabyte of space in the cloud for OneDrive for Business. All files that you store on OneDrive are inherently private unless you want to share them. And if you are signed in Office 365, you may even be able to share these documents within your organization and sometimes even outside your organization, depending on what your company policies are allowed. And the greatest part is anything that you upload to OneDrive becomes searchable, and it will come in search results of people who are only authorized to see it. So so your document becomes searchable and secure and easily accessible. So that's those are some of the key features of OneDrive for Business, and those are the important highlights of the product, which makes it a compelling storage for your intranet. Moving on, let's look at some of the collaboration aspects that SharePoint 2013 provides us with. Newsfeed. As you can see on the left hand side of your screen, the screenshot provides a newsfeed, which is a user's social hub where he or she can see updates from people, documents, sites, and tags that the user is following. Then we have communities. You can use communities to categorize and cultivate discussions among a broad group of people across your organization. They often, communities promote open communication and information exchange by enabling people to share their expertise and seek help from others who have knowledge in specific areas of interest. Community sites are available with self-service administration and moderation. You get modern features such as achievements and reputations. You have modern discussion boards, etc. Let's look at My Site's profile and expertise. My Site gives your users rich social networking and collaboration features, which will enable them to explore and share interests, share information about the projects they worked in, business relationships they have, share content, and other data with the people within their organization. And because My Sites enable users to easily share information about themselves, their skill, and their work, this sharing of information encourages collaboration, builds and promotes information about expertise, and targets relevant content to the people who want to see it. As you can see here, About Me is a corporate profile, and editing my profile is no longer a mile-long page with boxes. It's nicely divided into basic and contact information, where you can highlight the relevant information, and you can choose to share it with people that you think need to see it. Now let's look at one of the newer introduction of SharePoint 2013, and newer and most powerful and engaging, you can say. So Delve helps you discover the information that's likely to be the most interesting to you right now, and that's across Office 365. So you don't have to remember the title of the document or where it is stored. Delve shows you documents no matter where they are stored, in OneDrive for Business or in sites in Office 365. It promises to present in front of us what we need before we even ask for it. The information is delivered in a way that is easy to consume and quick to scan, and it's personalized and tailored to the logged in user. Let me ask Challa to give more insights on the smart features of Delve. Challa?
Hi. So one of the things that I want to reiterate and what Sharda mentioned was that the product, this particular product, Delve, is available only through Office 365. So it's not available in a on-premises model at all. So this is another example of how Microsoft is pushing newer features and newer products into a cloud model than in the traditional on-premises delivery model. So so it's just an example. The second thing is that I want to say is that because it is Office 365 product, it oversees, it kind of encompasses all the content across the Office 365 product, which includes your OneDrive, email, everything else, including SharePoint too. Lastly, the way it is, it is essentially a service and, a search and a discovery tool, but it uses much more different approach to the search itself. It uses, underneath there, it uses the Office Graph technology, which uses what is known as signals and edges. Edges are essentially what is organizational hierarchy, how you relate to your rest of the team or a social network and everything else, or which group you're part of and things like that. That is defined by edges. And the signals are much more like your actions or how you interacted with the content, how you or others are interacted with the content. So in that sense, document from your network would be given much more relevant or search priority, relevant search relevance to a document that is coming from a distant person within the organization, meaning a person who is not in the same department as you are, so on and so forth. So the searches are much more very user-centric. The results are based on your interactions, your connections to the people, and it's much likely to be the one that you would want to see. So it's a very different search experience, and that's provided through Office Cloud model.
That's great. I just want to highlight that what Challa said. Delve is available. It's an app, and it's available only on Office 365. I just wanted to highlight that.
Yes.
Now, let's look at intranet on Office 365. Among the models that we saw earlier, as Challa was talking, Office 365 falls into a public or a shared cloud, wherein you are sharing a set of services with other users. So if you are a small or medium-sized organization and want to set up your intranet, what were your options earlier? So you had to buy huge servers, recruit people, get network hardware, etc., which basically led large implementation footprints, and it was we were heavily dependent on people to keep this intranet up, and it involved huge operational and license costs, and there was high dependency on VPN in order to access this data remotely, data on your intranet from remote locations. Now, Office 365 is beneficial for small organizations because they don't have to spend a lot of money on hardware or licenses or performing installations or performing upgrades or applying the service packs. So no worries about locking down or securing your content on SharePoint because it's all taken care by the Office 365 infrastructure. And all of this is done by a hosting environment, which is really great. So that's what it is in Office 365 on a public or shared cloud. And as you can see, how we are overcoming some of the patching nightmares, and when you have an on-premise installation of your intranet, you are always prone to hacking attack, which to remediate which you need to buy again expensive antivirus software, which all comes up bundled in Office 365, and it's all taken care of in terms of cost and the actual installation itself. So some of the key features of Office 365, it's, as I said, it's like, riding a public bus where you are sharing a set of services with other users. So this is the most economical way of hosting your intranet on SharePoint. And Office 365 complies with your industry standard regulations and is also designed to help you meet your regulatory requirements for your business. Since it is hosted on most high efficient devices and infrastructure, it's highly available and highly reliable as compared to your on-premise intranet. Now let's look at the next model, which is privately hosted SharePoint. Unlike Office 365, private cloud is an unmetered elastic infrastructure which can scale up and down pretty easily. In your shared or public offering, which you saw in Office 365, you are basically sharing your infrastructure with other companies, whereas here it's completely private, and you have complete control and freedom to customize your setup just like how you would have done your on-premises. Now, what comes packed into each private cloud compared to on-premises environment? Private clouds offer a deep cost savings on enterprise resources and management as well. The vendor is managing the planning, implementation, updates, troubleshooting, patch monitoring, and administrator, and you are relieved from all that hassle. Some of the key benefits of private hosting are, you can slash capital and operational expenditures. You don't have to worry about hardware depreciation or maintenance. It's all taken care by the vendor who is hosting, and it's very easy to scale to accommodate your future long-term growth. You don't have to hire or train extra staff to support the platform, and you are basically avoiding purchasing expensive licensing upfront. As you can see on the screen, sometimes the public cloud like Office 365 can become inefficient in terms of bandwidth as you are looping through within your company's data center, and if there is a heavy and if there is an application on your on-premise which is resource intensive, that can bring down your performance experience for your users. Whereas in private cloud, these issues are remediated and you have direct connectivity and much more efficient bandwidth, and you have, as you can see, greater control and privacy. So let's look at the next one. So far we saw a public shared offering, which is Office 365, and then privately hosted model, which vendors like FPWeb, Rackspace, Microsoft Azure provide you with. Let's look at hybrid SharePoint deployment. Now, in the recent times, hybrid has become a core strategy for many companies who are looking to adopt the performance and agility of the cloud, while still guarding the private information, client's private information in-house. Now, this comfortable alternative to an all-in approach employs an outsourced IT infrastructure with a specialized support alongside on-premise resources. So you are keeping your sensitive data in your data center, and you are hosting your extranet with a private cloud service. What you are also doing thereby is, you are separating your users from utilizing the same network that's serving up your private data. And as you can see from the diagram, so you have an intranet which has complex workflows, heavy document management system, secure line of business integrations, and resource-intensive applications. So all this, you would like to host in your intranet, and you are okay with intranet going down once in a blue moon, which is still acceptable. But whereas in your extranet, which you have hosted for your customers or partners, where you want business continuity and speed is a factor which is highly important for you, and you can also access anywhere from any device, and you are publishing customer specific information on these extranet. This scenario makes it a very ideal candidate for a hybrid model, hybrid deployment. Now the hybrid comes up with different topologies. As you can see here, you can establish trust between your SharePoint Online server and SharePoint Office 365, SharePoint on-premise, in order to access content from each other. As you can see, the one-way inbound, wherein your SharePoint Online can query your on-premise SharePoint 2013. A search is just an example. You can access your SAP data from Duet Online. You can access your SharePoint line of business applications using BCS. So these three, services can be provided, through this by establishing the trust between your on-premise and cloud hosting. One way outbound, where you are, where your SharePoint Server 2013 can access the SharePoint Online search index. Then you have bidirectional, which is two-way, where you can access information from either way. So these are three different topologies where which will enable you to exchange data from your two different hostings. Now let's look at one of the examples of a hybrid model that we have hosted in our organization. So we have one of our clients who has Microsoft Dynamics, CRM, SAP, Active Directory, some of their line of business data in Oracle database, all of that in their corporate network, and their employees accessing it, and their employees are also getting some of the key information from emails and other channels which they which are being stored in SharePoint and which they use to generate some customer specific reports that they push to the extranet, and the extranet is being accessed by people from different locations in the world, and they don't have to connect to a VPN in order to access it. They have their own logins. They are registered users, these customers and partners, and based on their login credentials, they are eligible to access certain specific information which they are authorized to, and thereby you are taking advantage of the best of the both worlds, wherein you want the agility of the extranet or the cloud, whereas you are keeping your heavy processing on your on-premise intranet. Now let's look at something called as express route for intranet. So far we discussed private cloud and shared cloud, and then the hybrid model. Now what's express route? Now express route is something, it's an offering from Microsoft Azure, which enables you to connect directly from your private infrastructure through the cloud. This is for organizations who are who have a huge concern for data security, and that's stopping them from moving their intranet to cloud. So this is a solution for such organizations. It comes with a little bit of cost, but if data security is your priority and you cannot compromise with that, then there is a way for you to host your data on the cloud and take advantage of all the smart things that come up with hosting on cloud. So you are not going through the intranet. You are connected basically directly to your cloud from your private infrastructure by the help of some network service providers and exchange providers. There are some few exchange and network service providers that have tied up with the Microsoft Azure, in order to provide this kind of service to the clients. So as you can see, it's highly reliable, it's fast, and the performance of storage and backup and recovery is excellent, and and it's predictable and reliable, as you can see. Now, since we have seen different models of SharePoint 2013 deployment, now let's look at the migration, the steps involved if in case you decide to migrate to cloud. So based on what is the most optimal for your business, from what we have seen so far, you find out what is the model that's best suited to you. You come up with a timeline, and then you perform an inventory check wherein you go and see what is that you can get rid of and carry only the stuff that is relevant and useful for you futuristically. Then you perform a migration test, and then you confirm the results with the business. So those are the steps at a very high level that you will require if you decide to migrate your intranet to cloud. Now let me pass on to Challa, who will now take us through the key takeaways. And
thank you, Sharda. Let me just quickly recap a little bit and then talk about the key takeaways from this conversation. So we looked at different cloud service models. We looked at different deployment scenarios for SharePoint. One of the most popular one being the Office 365. We looked or we reviewed what features of SharePoint that makes it a more compelling intranet platform. We looked at SharePoint, benefits of SharePoint on the cloud, how that it differs from a traditional on-premises model of consuming SharePoint. We also looked a little bit on the hybrid deployment of SharePoint, and then lastly, the migration. So the key takeaway we want to leave away with you I think it's important for you to start from what of the cloud scenario is the right for you. So you would want to review your corporate cloud strategy. Almost every large enterprises and small and medium businesses today have enough push to get them to the cloud, and they do have some form of a cloud initiative or other. So you want to align your intranet along with those strategies, and overall you want your intranet to be in the same direction as the rest of the organizations move towards cloud. Definitely evaluate Office 365 as a cloud-based intranet platform, focusing more on the SharePoint, of course. Our recommendation is to start small, start with a smaller team or one single division, so to say, and identify what gaps you have and how you can address them, what functionalities that if you had anything traditionally on the intranet, on the on-premises model, that you don't get on the in the cloud model, and if there are any other gaps, how to address them or any of those things, or restructure that. We do sometimes recommend picking a team which is slightly crosses organizational boundaries, so to say, to get a flavor of different user participation and different user types to get good feedback, good and valuable feedback. Lastly, look at any of the gaps and how your integration options are, either through hybrid deployment or through business connectivity services for any of the data or services or anything that is on-premises and that cannot be moved to the cloud. So those are the big takeaways. And we also want to talk about, typically you want to be able to look at some cost structure before you make a move. So we want to present the next kind of a scenario, small enough scenario to say, of considering deployment for, let's say, 50 users. A lot of these things are based on assumptions, so it's not exactly accurate, and a lot of assumptions are gone through. But if you need anything that is specific for your need or your environment, please do not hesitate to get in touch with us. We'll be more than happy to work out what could be a potential cost saving for you in terms of moving to the cloud, and what the approaches could be for your unique needs. So if you look at on-premises SharePoint, typically, you look at license fees, hardware cost, and the SharePoint administrator, everything else, that's a cost for a year. If you compare the same thing to a privately hosted SharePoint, let's say it's a managed service provider such as Rackspace or somebody else, you roughly around $190,000 per year. Whereas on the Office 365, you're around $6,000 license fee for 50 users for Office 365 on a monthly consumption basis. So that's a complete, very compelling proposition in terms of the Office 365 model. So the decisions are like now coming back to the simple pizza idea. Is the decisions are like either to make at home or dine out. Again, we think that like different companies have different needs. We can help you figure that out. We definitely the push is towards the cloud for lower cost of operation. Also, not only just that, but also the accelerated time to transform your organization. Businesses have very shorter timelines today to re-engineer the processes or transform the IT initiatives, and the cloud is a huge platform that allows you to do that. There are some cases where cloud has not been an option. We may need to look at hybrid solutions. So those are the key takeaways for you, and we are here to help you make the decisions. If there is any specific questions, we'll take them as we go along now. And if there's questions around more detail-oriented nature, we'll take it up directly with you. Again, here's our information to get in touch with us. We're here to help. That pretty much brings us to the end of the webinar today. Let's go through. Senthil, do we have any questions so far accumulated or?
Oh yes, we have a little over 12 minutes left, and it's time for questions. We have a few questions, but if you have any, please go ahead and type in the questions window. But we'll keep answering questions which are already in the slot. So here's our first question for the day. I have a huge data center in-house and business critical data. Can the intranet on cloud talk to the data in-house only for analytical purposes? Okay,
I can take that.
Sure.
I mean, this takes us back to our slide for hybrid. So yes, we can access line of business data between on-premises and SharePoint Online by establishing the trust between these two environments, as we saw in our hybrid model. So yes, this is perfectly achievable. There are ways to do this. Thank you. Thank you for that question.
Great. Here's our next question. Will the license cost depend on the number of users or for the storage space required, or it's for both?
I can take that, Senthil. So yes and no. So the by and large, the licenses cost depends on number of users. So Microsoft sells you Office 365 based on per user per month fee structure. There is included in that fee is typically a storage space. Storage space again depends if it is Office 365 that includes an email, such as the Exchange Online, or like you're looking at a SharePoint storage. So there are multiple types of storage, but all the licenses do come with a certain number of storage spaces pre-configured, and that most often it is sufficient for most of the clients. But in occasions when you need additional storage space beyond what is included, you can buy them as a separate line item, and that is not that expensive again. Cloud storages are pretty cheap compared to many of the other traditional on-premises storage costs. So yeah, so the answer is, in a simplified form, I would say that to start with, I would say that use the number that is specifically for a per user license fee, and then work that number out, and then consider if you need any additional storage space. The storage space costs are not that high anyways.
Okay. So there's a question on integration. Can intranet on cloud be integrated with other LOB applications like SAP CRM?
Okay. Yeah, this again takes us back to the hybrid model, where the SAP business data is accessible using Duet Online. The BCS and search indexes can be accessed from your cloud and your on-premises version using hybrid topologies. If you want both ways, you can have set up bidirectional trust and access it. So by establishing trust based on the preferred direction, you can very much access data from each other.
Okay. So next one is a sort of a scenario question. I have an intranet and it has a lot of custom components built in. How difficult would it be for me to push this intranet to cloud? Should there be anything specific to be kept in mind when strategizing this movement?
Sure, I can take that, Senthil. So yeah, these are very common scenarios. We have seen this again and again many times with our clients who traditionally have been on SharePoint Online, SharePoint on-premises model, either be it from SharePoint 2007, March 2007, some are in SharePoint 2010, but Office 365 and SharePoint Online are much more recent, so they're like, as it is getting much more popular, they're considering moving towards the cloud. So the way that we approach this is to look at it as not as an upgrade, but as a migration, meaning you're not trying to move everything completely. You're trying to evaluate and see what makes sense to move and what does not make sense to move. So a lot of times when we say about customizations, those customizations are done for specific reasons. So we go back and relook at what those business needs are for those customizations and see how that the same thing can be done in a cloud model in a different way. So there may be possibilities that you can solve the same business requirement through different apps that are available in the Microsoft Store today, or any other apps that you can work in our Office 365 environment. Sometimes you may need to leave that out. So there may be, because of the nature of the platform, there are some customization cannot be made on the cloud. So those need to be evaluated and see how that can be provisioned or provided to the user in a different fashion. So yes, it's a involved process. Our recommendation would be to review that closely and see. Again, Trigent as a consulting company can help you with some of those discovery process and understanding and strategizing what makes sense to move. But by and large, heavy customizations tend to be trickier, tend to be difficult to completely move or migrate, so you need to be careful about that.
Great. Here's another scenario question. We are trying to automate several workflow processes which integrate directly with Active Directory. Is it possible to do that in the cloud?
Yes, I think the question is kind of a two-part. I'm not sure when I kind of understood the question. So anyway, I'll try and attempt it. So I think there was one part about Active Directory. So Active Directory itself, it's fairly very simple and straightforward to integrate your on-premises Active Directory to the Office 365, right? So there's Microsoft itself provide you directory sync tools. It's a tool that runs on behind your firewall, on your infrastructure, and kind of continuously synchronizes, or not continuously, but periodically synchronizes your Active Directory to the cloud, to the Microsoft cloud. So that essentially it's fairly straightforward, simple. You can be pretty much Microsoft can help you when you're moving to Office 365, or it's a very simple tool that you can install and be running in about a day. There are also third-party tools that allows you to do the similar synchronization. The only difference is that they do beyond Active Directory, they provide support for LDAP and other things. But if you're in scenarios only Active Directory, then that's a fairly simple Microsoft tool called a directory sync is all that you need. The second part of the question was about the workflow. So workflows, yes, a lot of workflows are leveraging your Active Directory permissions and Active Directory roles, so to say. Of course, all those things are possible to build quite a comprehensive workflow even in the cloud model. You can deploy workflow situations in the cloud model too. I hope I answered that, but if it is not, if your question is still not answered, drop us an email and we'll be glad to get in touch with you and follow that through.
Okay, great. Actually, there's another part to this question. We answered two parts. There's another part. They also need to integrate with SharePoint BA and in future GL systems, which will be on-premise. How much is possible?
Right. Third, I want to talk. Okay, so that we want to talk about the same hybrid model that we talked about through your webinar. So much of the solution would be around the hybrid model, depending on where the data is coming from and what kind of integrations you need. So it is possible to have Office 365 and integrations with on-premises data to some extent, either through business connectivity services or through some of the other products such as Microsoft Do It, which is most specifically for the CRM tools, things like that. So that's possible to do integrations. Again, I wanted to leave it at that, and we really don't know the specifics, but it is possible. If it is a simple search, that's very simple. We talk about search situations in there, but a lot of other things you can have bidirectional data synchronization also, or data communication between both the on-premises or on-cloud platform. The integration choices are available, but you need to be evaluating that specific for your needs and your situations.
Great. I don't see any further questions coming up. I think we are also running short of time. We're almost there. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks for your questions. And again, as usual, please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any further questions. We are happy to go into much more detail if that would be helpful. Thanks a lot for your time this afternoon.
And we'll be sharing the record.
Right. So recording will be shared with all attendees. So we should share that with you soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for attending.
Bye.
Bye-bye.